Imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions. Albert Einstein.
You're listening to the Deep Gripping Reality Podcast, the show that gives you leadership lessons and insights from the cutting edge of digital marketing. Hosted by Stephen J. Adelman. It's about to get deep.
You never stop to think about what if or why not? A lot of the reason that things don't get done and the people don't chase their dreams is because they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of losing. They're afraid of getting told no. They don't ask for a raise because they're afraid that they'll get told no and they don't want to be embarrassed or they don't want to have that awkward conversation. I get knots in my stomach just thinking about that kind of a conversation. It's amazing to me just how debilitating fear can be. And so I started thinking about Stanley Martin Lieber. Now, Stanley Martin Lieber has had such a huge impact on pop culture that it's insane. You know him better as Stan Lee. And unless you've been living under a rock for the last 10 years, you know his work. His work being from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from Marvel in general. Stan Lee is the creator of Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, Captain America, so many other characters. And what's amazing about that is that a lot of what Stan Lee did was he just thought about, what if? What if we had a hero who could stick to walls, who was kind of scary? And he thought at first like Flyman or whatever, and he ended up coming up with Spider-Man. And at first, the publishers hated the idea. They're like, that's stupid. Nobody wants to hear about a teenager with problems. Superheroes are supposed to be just that, heroic. They don't have problems. Well, they were wrong. People wanted to hear about a relatable character, somebody that even if you have superpowers, it doesn't solve all of your problems. You still have personal problems. So they created this fundamentally flawed character because he had issues and people related to him and it blew up. Same thing with the Fantastic Four. What if we had family conflict? What if we had, heroes with actual issues? What if there was a guy who could stretch his body and was crazy smart? What if there was a woman who could turn invisible? What if there was a man made of stone and kind of looked like a monster? It was just his thing. That's how Stan Lee came up with these heroes. He just let his imagination go. And the funniest part about Stan Lee is the reason he chose Stan Lee as his pen name for comics was because he thought that it would be a really good way to hide his real name, Stanley Martin Lieber, which he wanted to use as his pen name for when he penned the next great American novel. He thought of the comic book thing as a side job, as something that he did until he made it big. And he had no idea that he would literally change global culture with these characters that he created. But he still thought, what if I wrote that great American novel? Now, he never did because he ended up following the passion of the comic book characters, but he's just one example. That's my nerd culture showing a little bit. There's so many more. The backstory of Nintendo is freaking amazing, and I'm not going to get into it right now because I'd like this to stay somewhat short, but with Nintendo, that was a lot of what if. That was an American guy actually reaching out and saying, what if this little Game & Watch handheld game was available much more globally in a bigger way. And so that guy, who happened to be at the right place at the right time, a salesman, ended up convincing some bigwigs at Nintendo to keep going, and they ended up going big and becoming Nintendo. And what if that never happened? Elon Musk, he's my favorite example of what if. Elon Musk thought, what if space exploration and rockets weren't super expensive? What if we could return the capsule or the rocket back to Earth and recycle it and reuse it? What if we weren't just literally throwing billions of dollars into space? And what if we could, and SpaceX was born, what if we had an easier way to pay online that didn't involve banks necessarily directly? PayPal. What if electric cars came in 3 classes, one of them being an entry level or a super expensive class that we would use to fund everything, and it'd be a luxury model, and then What if we had something a little cheaper each time until the average Joe could afford one of our cars? And we'll call it the Model S and the Model E and the Model X and the Model Y, which is sexy when you spell it out. So, and then he thought, what if we drilled huge tunnels in the ground and had monorail-like systems which had like maglev and were super fast, so you could get from point A to point B, miles and miles of coverage in minutes, faster than anybody thought possible. Well, the Boring Company was born. What if solar panel? I mean, the list goes on, and the difference between that person and me, or that person and you, is usually just that they keep entertaining that. It's not a fleeting idea. It's one of those things that they grab onto and they embrace, and they say, yeah, what if I did do that? And the idea of the bad what ifs might get in, but not to the same level as everybody else. So the bad what ifs are things like, well, what if I can't afford it? Well, a lot of people will go, well, then I guess it's just not worth it, and I probably can't anyway. Because your brain is typically hardwired to try and protect yourself. And you don't like negative feelings, right? So nobody does. So failure is a negative feeling, generally speaking, and you have to try to rewire your brain to see failure differently. I'm not afraid to try new things when it comes to experimenting on social media or digital marketing in general, because if I fail, I learn, and that's really what it's about for me. And every failure is an opportunity. It's I don't like to say, here's the problems. I like to think, here's the opportunity areas. And that may seem like silly verbiage, but really it's not. It's a thought process. And if you can convince yourself that not only is it possible to change the reality around you, you just have to figure out how, but it's probable. And not only that, but it needs to happen, and you need to be the one to help make it happen. So it's a very powerful thought process. It's a very powerful way that this works. And it's something that I feel very strongly about, is imagining what if. So here's a good example of a real world application of what if in my world, okay? One of my clients has a product that is very outdoor oriented. And so I thought, what if we could take, because a friend of mine has this, one of my coworkers has this amazing 360 camera where he bought it, it syncs up with Google Street View. It's like $1,000 camera, right? And I said, you can take those 360 pictures, which we've all kind of seen them once in a while sparingly in Facebook, but it's like an interactive picture. And I said, what if we took that out in the middle of the woods and we hid this outdoor product around the scene, and then we took a 360 product and we let clients, or let the audience try and discover where they were. And then but before that, there's actually something that came before that. I said, what if we had a mascot that was really, really funny, kind of a cartoony character? He was outdoorsy, but he was also a scientist. And sure enough, the mascot was born. The owner of the company paid a designer to come up with this little cartoon character, and it's Outdoor Joe's is the product. I can't tell you about it without telling you the name. So Outdoor Joe's is the product. Outdoor Joe was the mascot. And so then when we got this 360 picture back, I said, well, what if we hid Outdoor Joe all around in this picture? We had him in a cape and he was flying up above, and we had the Outdoor Joe's logo at his feet, or at the feet of the camera. And sure enough, it worked. We were able to do this amazing 360 post on Facebook, and it had thousands of people that engaged with it. And it's just this really cool experience. It's a little mini game on your phone. And the cool part is that when you look at it on your phone, it motion tracks. So in my mind, I thought, I'm going to throw the wildest thing out there, and I'm going to tell people about it. And what if we make it a reality? And people jumped on board, and it happened. So you never know unless you ask. And people talk about materializing things and the power of manifestation. Well, what if you put it out in the universe and it actually can and does happen? And that's really what I want to leave everybody with today. I want you to really stop and think about your life, and think about, what if it could be better? What would it take to make it better? What could you do to make it better? You have the power. You just have to empower yourself. Are you satisfied with the status quo? If the answer is no, what if you could change it? And if the answer is your life would be better, then the next question is, what would it take to change it? Okay? And try and find ways to say yes. It's easy to say no. And it's easy to avoid rejection because you never try anything new. But what if you didn't? What if you tried harder? What if you looked harder? What if you focused harder? The power of what if is a superpower. And once you can harness that and realize that failure is not the worst thing in the world, it's actually a very good thing because you have the opportunity to learn and grow. You can't grow without change. It doesn't happen. Here's a little fun fact I'm going to leave you with. This is a really good one. Did you know that when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and becomes a butterfly, a lot of people just think, oh, it goes in there and whatever. That thing completely liquefies. It changes on, I want to say, a molecular level, turns into goo, and then is reborn out of nothing and becomes a butterfly. Now, I don't know if that's painful because I don't know if caterpillars can feel, but I can say that's some pretty intense change. And it's something that it has to go through in its life cycle. So if you want to turn into your next beautiful phase, be willing to reinvent yourself. Be willing to ask that question, what if? Go forth, my friends, empower yourself. And until next time, dig deep, my friends.
Check out the Deep Gripping Reality Podcast, your place for digital marketing tips, tricks, hacks, personal sales strategies, and more, all on major platforms.